This is a real-life story. Due to serious security concerns and deeply personal reasons, all names of individuals have been withheld. What you are about to read is drawn from actual events. What happened to this man inside that prison room would make even the coldest heart shatter, and his last words before losing consciousness change everything. This is one of those testimonies you know is as sincere and moving as possible. This brother has opened his heart completely, sharing one of the most honest and personal experiences we've ever encountered. He reveals one of the shocking persecution experiences you might have heard before. The decision he took is a decision that is both heartbreaking because of what he passed through and deeply convicting. But what he did and experienced afterward is truly shocking and mind-blowing. I used to be the person you feared most in a room. And the saddest part? I wore that truth like a crown. My name does not matter anymore. What matters is who I was and what God did with the wreckage. I am a man, 42 years old now, though my body carries the memories of someone much older. I was born in Tehran, Iran, into a family that breathed religion like oxygen, the kind of religion that comes with a uniform, a title, and permission to harm people in the name of purity. My grandfather was a religious leader. My father, a judge of Islamic law. My destiny was already written the day I arrived into this world. At 19, I enlisted in the Revolutionary Guard with a full heart. Not because I was forced, because I believed. Everywhere they fed us, I swallowed without question. The West was poison. Christianity was a weapon of spiritual destruction. And those who turned away from Islam, those converts, they were the worst of all betrayers. I was taught that, and I became the man who enforced it. For 17 years, I worked inside a prison in northern Tehran, a place that looked ordinary from the outside but held a universe of suffering within its walls. I specialized in interrogating Christian converts, men and women who had walked away from Islam and chosen Jesus. My job was simple: break them or end them. I lost count. That is the most painful sentence I have ever written. I lost count of how many people passed through my hands. The first person who cracked something open to me was a pastor, a man in his early 50s with kind eyes and a quiet, steady voice. He had been arrested for leading a small underground church in his home. When I sat across from him during his first interrogation session, I laid out photographs of his family on the table, his wife, his children, his grandchildren. I told him clearly what would happen to them if he refused to cooperate, if he refused to sign a document denying his faith and exposing his church members. He looked at me calmly, called me by my first name, which made my blood burn, and told me something I was not prepared to hear. He revealed to me that I could take everything from him, his freedom, his family, even his life. But the one thing I could never take was the name he belonged to. He belonged to Christ, he said, and no force in that room could change that. I beat him until he spat blood onto the concrete floor. He signed nothing. Then we moved him to the stress chair, a metal structure where a person is forced into an impossible position and left there for hours upon hours. When the guards finally lifted him out after 20 straight hours, his legs could not hold him. 2 guards dragged him back to his cell. And as they dragged him, barely able to breathe, he began to sing. Not screaming, not cursing, singing. A soft song in our own language about a love that never fails and never runs out. That song followed me home that night. It followed me into my prayers, into my dinner, into the dark behind my eyes when I tried to sleep. But it was a woman who finally destroyed me, not with her resistance, but with her forgiveness. She was 37 years old, a teacher, a mother of 2 daughters. She had converted after reading the New Testament years before her arrest. Someone in her neighborhood reported her, and on an October evening in 2020, she arrived at the prison. During our first session, I explained her situation, the legal consequences, the fate of her daughters. She listened to everything I said with her hands folded gently in her lap. Then she shared something with me. She revealed that for 35 years she had been a devoted Muslim, praying 5 times daily, fasting, reading the Quran, doing everything correctly. And yet, she told me there had always been an emptiness inside her that no ritual could touch. She told me that when she read about Jesus, something in that emptiness was filled. She found peace. She found love she had never felt before. And she said, gently but without apology, that she could not deny that to save herself. I increased the pressure over the following weeks. Nighttime interrogations that kept her awake for 48 hours at a stretch. Isolation. Threats designed specifically to target what she loved most, her daughters. None of it worked. Her body weakened. She lost weight. Her hands developed tremors from the sleep deprivation. But something in her eyes only grew stronger the more we applied. What destroyed me was what she did during the interrogations. She prayed out loud. For me, she would pray aloud, asking God to open my eyes, to show me love, to heal whatever wounds had made me into the person sitting across from her. I yelled at her to stop. She smiled sadly and told me that everyone needed prayer, especially those who did not yet know they needed it. On a particular night in December, around 2 a.m, I authorized a harsher punishment. They suspended her by her wrist from hooks in the ceiling of a punishment cell, the tips of her toes barely grazing the ground. This position, after hours, produces a pain in the shoulders that is beyond description, a burning, tearing sensation that radiates through the entire upper body, the kind of pain that makes people agree to anything. When I entered to check on her condition, I expected collapse. I found her singing, the same song the pastor had sung months before. I shouted at her. I demanded to know why she was doing this to herself. I told her to just lie, just sign the paper, just save her life. Her answer broke something in me that I have never fully repaired. She explained to me that Jesus himself did not avoid pain. He went to a cross for her, and she asked, quietly, how she could do less for him. I walked out of that cell trembling. 3 months later, she developed pneumonia from the conditions of her cell. Prison doctors recommended hospitalization. The authorities denied it. She was just an apostate, they said. Letting her suffer served as an example to others. On a morning in February, they called me to her cell. She was lying on the cold concrete floor, her skin gray, her breathing shallow and labored. Her lips were moving in prayer. I knelt beside her. I do not fully understand why. She whispered my name with the last real strength she had. She told me she forgave me. She told me Jesus loved me. She told me to look for him, that he was waiting. She died 3 hours later. That night, I sat alone in the dark of my home while my family slept, and for the first time in many years, I wept. Not gentle tears. Sobs that shook my entire body, the kind that make a grown man ashamed until he realizes that the shame itself is proof something real is happening inside him. I remembered a Bible I had hidden months before in a desk drawer, confiscated from the pastor during his arrest, which I had been ordered to burn but somehow could not. That same night I opened it for the first time with real hunger. I read of a man named Jesus who told the weary to come to him, and he would give them rest. I read words that told me to love enemies, bless those who curse, pray for those who persecute. The woman had done exactly that. For me, her torturer. Over the following months, I read in secret. Every page pulled apart a certainty I had spent 17 years building. I began to see the people in the cells not as files and threats, but as human beings with families and names and futures. Then one early morning in May 2021, I had a dream so real it was more vivid than anything I experienced while awake. A figure of blinding light stood before me. I cannot describe the face, but the presence reached into every corner of my soul, and I felt seen completely, every cruelty, every lie, every destroyed life fully exposed. And instead of judgment, I heard words spoken directly into my spirit, telling me I was known and chosen, and asking me to follow, even though the road would cost everything. I said yes. My escape came at great cost. A network of believers helped me. I was caught, brought back to the very prison where I had worked, and placed in the interrogation chair, the same metal chair I had used on others. What they did to me in those hours is difficult to write without my hand shaking. Water poured over cloth on my face, again and again, cutting off breath, producing a drowning sensation that every cell in the body screams against. Electric shocks through wires attached to my skin that caused every muscle to contract violently. Suspension from ceiling hooks until my shoulders threatened to separate. The guards worked in shifts. I did not, but in the middle of that room, in the middle of that agony, I felt a presence that had never been in that room before when I was the one behind the table. I began to say one word over and over, just one name, until I had no voice left to say it. By a sequence of events I cannot explain except as miracle, a God who claimed to have dreamed he was sent to help me, a confusion that entered a corridor at exactly the right moment, a gap in a fence that should have been monitored, I escaped. Weeks of crossing through Pakistan, Afghanistan, a terrifying transit through eastern Iran on forged documents, and finally Turkey, where I collapsed on the floor of a United Nations refugee office and became, officially, a man the world recognized as displaced and free. 16 months in a refugee camp. Baptisms witnessed. Stories shared. Seeds planted. Today I live in Toronto. I work with a ministry supporting Christian refugees. My body carries scars that will not fade. Some nights I wake up gasping. But I also carry something else, a peace that was taught to me by a woman on a prison floor, a peace that makes no logical sense and that I have never been able to explain away. To every Christian reading this, pray for the persecuted church. Pray with specificity and urgency. There are people in metal chairs right now whose only companion is that same presence I found. Your prayers matter more than you know. If you have never surrendered your life to Jesus and you feel something pulling at you through this story, then pray simply and sincerely, Lord Jesus, I don't fully understand everything, but I want to know you. Forgive my past. Come into my life. Make me new. I am yours. That is enough. He will do the rest. If this story moved you, share it, like it, comment your location, and subscribe. Someone you know needs to read this today.